Mr. Ric Ptak. How are you?
I'm great, Dom. How you doing?
I am good. I mean, I want you to take this as a compliment, and I think the woodworkers on the call will understand this. You're kind of like furniture on this podcast now.
Well, hopefully I'm not collecting dust.
No, you're not collecting dust. You're an integral part of this. I actually, I've learned a lot working with you. You have such a strong lean background, manufacturing. And as we've gone through this process of the SWIFT assessments, just listening to you and seeing how you work with clients it's eye-opening for me. And I think, don't laugh, please. I think I'm pretty good at lean, but I'm just watching you and I'm golf clapping.
Well, lean's a never-ending journey. So, if you're starting down the lean journey at the beginning and you're practicing it, that's great. If you're midway through, that's great. If you think you're near the end, you're only just starting. So there's never a finish line with lean. So it's always about raising the bar. Yeah. Wherever you're at now, how can we do better? What can we do better? And it's a lot of it is, and this is what I've learned, doing some of these SWIFT assessments so far, is that first of all, time is short, but you need to be proactive. You need to slot a small amount of time away so you can be proactive and move projects and initiatives forward slowly, a little bit at a time, rather than just delay, and then you have to react, and then it's frustrating, it's stressful, you don't have time, and you don't give it your best effort, right?
Well, speaking of taking small steps, I'm going to work on the assumption that people listening to this episode may not have listened to previous episodes. So let me start with my big opening question. Ric, can you tell us who you are and how you're talking on this podcast, Cabinet Maker Profit System, and how you would be the guy to talk to the owners of cabinetry, furniture, specialty wood products, especially manufacturing shops anyways?
You bet. So to start with, I'm a cabinet maker by trade, a woodworker. Went through my apprenticeship in the early 80s, and I was fortunate enough to have a Danish woodworker as sort of my master and my mentor. So, I mean, he didn't talk about lean, but he thought lean all the time. So it was built into, his psyche. And a lot of it had to do with, not taking a lot of steps, having everything close within 3 steps. If you're taking more than 3 steps to do something within a process, or to retrieve something, or to gather tools, or to gather supplies, then there's a problem. And the problem is we need to decrease the amount of steps so that we're decreasing the waste, and so that we can then create value for the customer.
Right.
The whole idea behind lean is, creating value for the customer. Anyway, I got my apprenticeship and went on to become a foreman, and went on to become a production manager. Also was on the project management side of things, installations and engineering. So I've got the full gambit of the woodworking industry. And dealing with the general contractors, and dealing with the tight timelines, and dealing with also the other customer, who would be the architect, designer, or the end user. If it's residential, it's obviously the homeowner. So understanding that whole large picture gives me the advantage to then see the best of the best. I've been in a lot of woodworking shops. I've seen the best of the best, and I've seen also the worst practices. And then, I've also been involved with those folks, helping them turn those worst practices into best practices, or, raising the bar, applying.
There's always improvement. There's always something that can be done. For people listening, I should remind everybody here listening, this is also a video. If you find it easier to watch this on YouTube, I don't know if it's that inspiring. I mean, Ric, you're a stunning human being, but looking at me on a video might not be the thing that gets somebody through their day. But regardless, sometimes people have technology issues. Not everybody's listening to podcasts. So please tell your friends and family that this is available as a YouTube video. But the reason I bring that up is because, Ric, your first interview here was you talking to us about the foreman because of your experience with the foreman. And with the success of that episode, I've gone on to have Charlie Phillips on here, who was referred by the CMA. And it's interesting how all of these different players have to just work together so well for everything to come together once you get the job, you know, and make sure that it works well, which is why we did the SWIFT assessment, because people are so concerned with, let's get the job, put it in the shop. And then my observations are we communicating with the shop? Does the shop know what we need? Are we listening to the shop when they're talking? I don't want to, exactly. You see what I just did there? Are we listening? Here's the sentence I was going to say. Are we listening to the shop when they talk to us? And I just created the us versus them mentality that you talked about in a call we had with somebody the other day. Shame on me.
Oh, well, you can learn. Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's all one company, right? So
I
get that us versus them mentality.
I didn't mean it that way, but you hand it off. Yeah.
You know, the manufacturing side says, oh, the engineers and the project managers screwed up. Listen, you're all one company.
That's
so
right.
You need to all work together and pull that, you know, sled up the hill together. We can't have some people, you know, pulling back on that. You all have to push that sled up the hill together. So, yeah, it's important that we have a good communication process. And what I mean by good is a respectful culture. A respectful communication. You know, of course there are going to be issues and problems. It's how we address them as a whole within that company that, you know, speaks to the culture. Yeah, yes, we had an issue, but here's what we're going to do to solve it. Let's put our heads together. Let's not blame people. You know, if we want to understand why there was an issue, that can be a separate discussion. What's the root cause? Why did this happen? Why did we have rework?
Yeah.
Let's determine what the root cause was beyond blaming. You know, there's the first level as well as we're going to blame somebody. Fine. After that happens, what are we going to do to fix it?
Yeah, I don't
want to deal with this in 3 weeks from now, given the same set of circumstances. So what are we going to do different the next time we get this situation so that we can address it in a better way and maybe have less work or eliminate the rework in that for that particular thing.
Yeah. Why do we act surprised every time a kitchen shows up? We're like, well, that's what we do. We do kitchens or TIs or whatever it is. There was a couple of interesting things in what you said there. The one I'm going to focus on is something I learned from you. I think I as with so many things, at least with me, there's things I know and I think I know, and then I heard it from you and a light clicked on again. Apparently with me, the lights have to click on a lot to keep the steady hum. But again, in one of the debrief calls that we were doing with some of the people that have already taken the SWIFT assessment, you talked about the pull versus the push, like pushing work through the shop versus pulling work through the shop. And, you know, I was obviously, we were on a conference call just like this, but I was taking notes. I'm like, God, Rick, you're right. Can you, just for the sake of the people here, what's your thought on that? It's an attitude. It's a language thing. You said we're trying to pull work through the shop, not push it. What does that mean?
Well, it's an attitude. It's a culture. And so, you know, the old way, so I'll go back to, again, when I was apprenticing and I went, you know, at the beginning of my, you know, when I became a journeyman cabinet maker, at the beginning, it was all about what can I accomplish off my bench and pile up beside my bench without ever understanding or even caring what is the next process step after that, right? So it was all about, you know, how much could I produce? When the boss walks by at the end of the day, oh, that guy, he produced a lot. Look, he's good.
There's a pile
that
of
was the old mentality. And I even going into shops, you know, in the last couple of years, I've had that same sort of thing happen. I'll give you a great example. Was in a company and the edge bander was running, and it had been running for it was early in the morning. It was about running for an hour. And the production manager and I were walking through, and he walked by and he said, look at all the product we've edged this morning already. It was a couple of pallets of shelves and components for cabinets. And I looked at it and I was sort of impressed. And then I sort of felt the edges, and I could feel that the trimmer wasn't quite set where it needed to be. So there was still a little bit of an edge there that had to be filed. So I asked the production manager, I said, so what happens now? There's this edge is raised on here. He says, oh, well, we have a guy on that bench over there, and he's going to have a router set up, and he's going to file them. And I said, So why wouldn't the edge bander be set up to do this, right? Take an extra half hour and set that edge bander up so I can reduce the amount of that filing and trimming by probably 90%. I'm not saying you're going to eliminate it, all of it, but I bet you 90% of that could be eliminated. You have somebody who just quickly checks the quality on it. Oh, here's one that needs a little touch up, fine. And it's all about it's not about then producing big piles and pallets of materials.
It's about quality.
Because then it's like, okay, what's the next step? Let's make a flow. Let's understand what the pull is. So if I should only be producing 100 components a day on the edge bander, why should then I edge 1,000? Because I can't utilize it. So it's all about not pushing, but it's about pulling. If the next process step can only grab 100 shelves that day and process them, or 100 components, then that's all I'm going to produce. Then I'm going to reduce the amount of work in progress, and I'm going to increase the flow so that I can get a finished product quicker at the end. Crazy. And that's what it's about.
Yeah. I've been learning from you a ton in this Swift process. And for people who aren't familiar with this, Ric, you were the president of an architectural woodworking association when you and I first met, and I came and spoke for your chapter. And it was that easy. That's how we met and got along right away. And then we got together on a phone call, thought, hey, why don't we create something that would help? COVID hit. I'm not sure if anybody's aware, but some weird things happened in March of 2020. And up until that point, you were the guy that used to fly in to shops all over the place, spend 3 days?
Usually, typically 3 to 4.
Spend 3 days at a shop, and you would walk through and you would ask the questions and meet in the boardroom and on the floor and in the lunchroom. And what were the things that you would do when you did these live in-person assessments in the old world of last March?
Well, a lot of it was, it's just watching. It's just, I just would stand in the corner of a shop and watch a particular area for an hour or two, take some pictures, take some video, go back, kind of analyze what I saw. I mean, I already knew what I was seeing, and it was just a question of documenting it so that in day 3 or day 4, when I would do my present back, my report out to the company representatives, and I would showcase highlight some of these things I saw, excessive walking, lots of rework, people waiting for information. So, when you're waiting, you're wasting time. Things aren't, you're not utilizing your time effectively. And time is such a critical thing. We're all saying we don't have enough time. However, when I go into shops, I see that time is wasted. So you have the time, it's just you're not utilizing it in an efficient, effective manner.
It's not being used the right way.
Exactly. So, I will point these things out, but it's me physically going there so that the company then could keep doing what they're doing, and you've got an outside set of eyes there, right? So that was in the old world, right? So in the new, when COVID hit, obviously that made a lot of restrictions on travel and going and exposing the risk.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can only be in one bubble at a time, and for OSHA or for health and safety standards, depending on where you are in the world, you can't have an outside person come float through the shop and leave again, because now there's risk on both sides.
Yeah. So now what we ask with the Swift assessment is we say, look, a company representative, get somebody to shoot some video of your processes.
Right.
Let me see, and the person who's capturing the video, capture the product moving. How long does it stay in queue between, process steps? How are the people interacting with the product? How are the people interacting with the machines, and capture some of this video. Same as if my eyes were there, send us the video, we analyze it, and then we then give you a report back and say, here's what we see. Here's some opportunities for you to maybe do this in a better way, in a more efficient way, and reduce some of your headaches, reduce some of your bottlenecks. So and interesting story here, Dom, if you don't mind, I share this, is that I've already gotten some feedback back from people when they send me the video. They said, when I saw this video, when I was shooting this video, I already saw that some of the tools, the way we had them placed was wrong. And the bit change over time was happening too much. So I shared this video already with my production manager, and we're already making some changes. So,
just from shooting the video, not even getting it to you yet.
I haven't even gotten it yet to view it. They saw that themselves.
Yeah.
So, and the reason for that is because now you've put on a different set of glasses, because you're not thinking about necessarily production and getting it out the door and getting to the spray shop and loading on a truck, getting it to the customer, and is my installer going to be there and all those things. Now you're focused on shooting video, and now you've got a different set of lenses, and now you're able to see some of those things that maybe you wouldn't have in the past because you had your blinders on because you were focused on other things. You were wearing, hat 89 and 90.
Oh, Rick, I can't believe you're saying this.
You can't do everything. And you're only human, right?
You know what's interesting about what you're saying there, and these are great observations. I've really enjoyed the conversations that we've had with the people taking the Swift. We have one spot left, by the way. You and I agreed that we were going to do 5 as our test because we need to get our systems. And we're lean guys. You're more like Rudolph at the front of all the reindeer, and I'm one of Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen. I'm one of the other ones, but you're definitely ahead of me on the lean thing. But we have to figure out our system.
Yeah. And
so we agreed to do 5 for people. We still have one spot available, by the way, for people listening who think that their shop might be ready. Then I guess people already know this, but you just send a text message to us. Actually, send it to my cell phone number. It's 604-837-8361. And in the text, just say Swift. That's it. That's about as lean as we can make it. Just text me the word Swift, and then Rick and I will take care of all the details from there. But I wanted to point something out, Rick, that you just said that's going to loop back for a lot of people who listen here. One of the things that we did, is we took the old process of how you would bring a lean expert in, and we're making it lean. Maybe we never needed to have you fly all around the world. Maybe this is the way it's supposed to be, but now we've been forced by timing and technology to do this. But the second thing you brought up that was really interesting is for those of you who've read a book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. Rick, you're already smiling. Have you read The E-Myth?
Well, I've read excerpts of it. I have to sit down and really go through it in detail again. Yes.
Well, here, I've got good news for you. I'm going to summarize the whole book right now.
Okay.
Because you actually just did it in the story you told of that shop that found the improvement by changing. You said they changed their view, or they changed their hat. I draw Michael Gerber's. Let me go back for a second. The book is called The E-Myth Revisited, and the subtitle is Why Most Small Businesses Don't Work and What to Do About It. People sometimes get confused. They think the E-Myth is about e-commerce. It's not. The E stands for entrepreneurial. So it's the entrepreneurial myth, why most small businesses don't work and what to do about it. And when I talk about this book from stage, and I often refer to this book because it's one of those pillars of, if I got to fix this company, this is what I need to do. It forms the basis of a lot of the coaching I've been doing for over 20 years. The book costs $20 if you go buy it. Buy it on Amazon. If you don't buy it, that book will cost you $20 million.
Yeah.
So you make the call. I say that to audiences all over, and you can see people in the audience, they get on their phone and they buy it right away. But here's the point, is that there are 3 ways that a business owner sees the world. And you just reminded me of that when you talked about the perspective and you guiding people to take those videos and look at the company from a new angle, a new way. And those 3 perspectives are, number 1 is the entrepreneur perspective. The entrepreneur looks at the company, looks at the day-to-day operations in a certain way. They ask a kind of question that always starts with how can I, or what if? So for instance, how can we improve our production process? What if we had better communication from estimating to the floor? Whatever the question is. That's the entrepreneurial mindset. And by the way, that doesn't have to take up all of the business owner's time, but it is the most valuable ROI of the owner's time. So that's the first one, entrepreneur. The second set of eyes that's pulling inside our brain as a business owner is the manager viewpoint, the manager eye that we're looking with. And that one's always looking at measurement. So when you and I talk about KPIs, metrics, numbers, data, statistics, that's the manager's role. And that one's got good return on investment too for an owner, but it's not the highest and best use of their time all the time. The next one is the lowest return on investment for an owner. And people are going to hate me for saying this. I'm just quoting the book, but I'll stand by it as well. The lowest use of an owner's time is as the technician, being on the tools. And that's when you and I say the money's not in the sawdust anymore. The money's not in the filings anymore. The money's not behind the hammer anymore, behind the tools. The technician doesn't ask any questions. They just get to work. They don't see the future. They can't see the future. A lot of shops are stuck there and they will be there forever, and that's okay. I'm glad you're listening to the show. Join us and start to see the world the way the rest of us do. But that entrepreneur mindset and that manager mindset is what you're talking about, Rick, when you take people through the questionnaire of the SWIFT process, bring in other parties. The owner and the production manager really don't communicate properly or aren't bought in. That's what we need them to do here. Mm-hmm. So I went for a long time there, Rick. Why don't I inhale and let you comment on the E-Myth for a second?
Sure. And, you mentioned about the ROI, and just for folks maybe who are not familiar with that terminology, that's return on investment. So, what is your best usage of time? And you were just describing that from, the manager's perspective is they have to have a larger field of view, a different perspective than the technician on the floor who's just going to fix that or move that process step forward, right? So we need all those positions within a company. It's just, what's the best use of time from the owner, manager versus the person on the floor doing the work, right? And so if the owner has to jump in and spray and install, and I see this happen all the time, Dom, and I'm sure you do too, where the owner has to jump in and fix things and do things, that's fine.
Of course.
We're putting out a fire. I get that.
Yeah.
But if you're continuously doing that, it's not a good use of your time. Can you imagine in the firefighting department if all they did was put out fires? And they do more than that. If people don't know, they go to schools and they educate the young kids not to play with matches. This is flammable. Don't do this, and look out for the hazards. And why did they do that? Because they're doing something called prevention. They're being proactive. Because if they do a good job of that, there'll be less fires started by kids playing with matches and gas and all those types of things.
Yeah.
So if they didn't do that, they'd have more fires to put out, right? So it's important that you have to divide your time, and you have to think about KPIs. And I think you mentioned that too, key performance indicators, measurement, whatever you measure gets attention. What gets attention is going to improve. So if you have things in your facility right now that you're not happy with, my first question is, are you measuring? You tell me there's a lot of rework. Oh, we deal with a lot of rework, a lot of mistakes, a lot of stuff coming back from the customer. We don't even catch it before it goes out the door.
Yeah.
So then we have to fix it. You know how much that's costing you? My goodness, that's got to be costing you a lot of money. First of all, to do it the second time and maybe even the third time. But it also is costing you in any increased sales, because now your schedule is cramped up with things that you have to do over again. That means you don't have any new potential sales coming.
Yeah.
So you can't even do that other project that you would like to start right now. That's a juicy one. The customer is willing to pay you quickly. You can't get to it because you're fixing up mistakes from the other jobs. Right?
Rick, I had a phone call with somebody the other day who was listening to one of the episodes I had done. I can't remember which episode, but we talked about how much it costs in very rough terms when one crew member in one truck has to go back to one job site to, bring back a kick or a valve, something that was forgotten. And on that call, I guess I had said it was about $600. That depends on so many factors, an incredible amount of factors. But the gentleman I was speaking to says, Dom, I had just listened to your podcast, and I get back in the shop and I'm looking there and we're loading a van with one piece of wood. I had to take one guy off the floor, put him in a van. He goes, I just stood there and I shook my head. Mm-hmm. He goes, I think it was more than $600. But that's a profit leak.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do here in the SWIFT assessment, is show the owner the leaks, because this is one of my favorite sayings. And one of the things I've learned over the years as a business owner myself is that my accountant told me this, by the way, if I can afford to lose money, I can afford to take money. Mm-hmm. So that $600 that the the owner saw going out the door when he put one person in one van to take one piece of wood to a job site, he could have taken that $600 and had the same impact on the company.
Sure.
The money's just gone. You can take it. Why do you have to waste it on rework?
Mm-hmm. But the real key then is, of course, is, why did that happen? And we have to understand then, what's the root cause of that? And then we have to do something different. We have to change our process. We have to create more training or provide more training for people.
Yeah.
So that's the real thing. And again, shops, I hit this roadblock all the time. Well, I don't have time to train. Well, and I tell them, you don't have time not to train, because if you don't train, that mistake is going to keep coming over and over again throughout the year. So it's $600 this month, $600 next month from somebody else, and that adds up. And so, I would rather take that potential loss of money. As you said, I'd rather take 600 than give it, right? So it's just understanding that I need to do things differently as a business owner in a few areas, and let's get then a different result, rather than say, we'll keep doing it the same way and hope for a different result, because that never happens. I haven't had it happen to me yet, so I don't know. Maybe you have done.
No, never. I mean, we know about that one. One of the things that I was interested, one of the things that I observed that was interesting to me was, of the people who've already responded on the SWIFT assessment, and this is data, how many of them contacted us because the owner, and I can't say it's always the owner or the foreman wanted the change to happen, but one of the other two wasn't bought into making a change. So just to keep it simple, I'll say the owner wanted to do it, but the production manager or the foreman wasn't bought in or wasn't as aware as the owner. And obviously it goes both ways. But how many times have you and I been, I was going to say the word used, but that's not what I mean. How many times was the SWIFT assessment used as a tool by the owner to remind the crew, hey, there's an opportunity here. We've been running this thing the same way. We're obviously successful. We're doing this. Could we be better? I don't know. Let's see if Rick has any suggestions. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly when you come in, Rick, you're 20 feet tall and made of muscle, and you're a bronze god standing in front of you. Just all these ideas. But I think that's smart on the part of the owner.
Well, I think sometimes it requires a catalyst, an outside set of eyes to help, sort of push people over the edge to say, listen, an outside set of eyes sees it. They're an experienced woodworker. They've been around to other shops. So maybe we should pay a little bit of attention to them.
Yeah.
And we should at least try to do something different. And I always say, prove that it doesn't work. Try it differently and prove to me that it doesn't work. And I think you'll find that it does work. So then just do it. I mean, it's just as simple as that. If you're not willing to risk something, then you're not going to gain it. So it's really, it's like throwing the football and the guy catches it. Well, it's up to the person now to run it to the end zone or try to run it to the end zone. And if they just stand there and don't know what to do with it, then it's pretty difficult. So, the SWIFT assessment, I think, is the way we're trying to design it, and the way it's coming out across is, then we give you a set of recommendations. Here's some next steps. This is the priority list of what
to do.
You, based on what you've told us up to this point. Here's what we suggest you do moving forward. You might have a list of 20 or 30 things. There's no way you can do them all. Let's pick the top 3, the ones that are going to have the biggest impact on your business in a short amount of time, or, as you say, the biggest ROI or return on investment, and work on those things first. And once those are in progress and you feel that they're moving forward or they're completed, then pick the next 1 or 2 things off the item.
I've been re-listening to Paul Akers, the author of 2 Second Lean and the owner of Fast Cap, and he's lean on even another level.
Fix what bugs you.
Fix what bugs you, for sure. But he also, I think I'm going to probably get the reference wrong, but the idea is right, is that he was asked the question, well, what happens when we fix that bottleneck? What do we do? And he said, don't worry, there'll be another one.
There's another one show up.
Another one will show up. But that's okay. Again, remember, we started this conversation about the perspective or the language of understanding, hey, we're going to go find a bottleneck and we're going to fix it. And then there's going to be another one. And what we're going to do? We're going to go fix that one too.
Yeah, exactly. And what I found is with companies that have taken lean already and have been practicing it for a few years, they make their work processes and even some of their equipment, they make them movable. Because what I do this year doesn't mean next year I'm going to be manufacturing the same thing, or even next month. And I've gone into some shops that are really practicing lean wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And the way that the assembly area was set up 3 months ago, if I go in there now, it's completely different again. And I say, what happened? He says, well, we're just doing this product now, and it's a lot easier to bring this piece of equipment over here and bring this tool bin over here. And because we have it on wheels, it's easy for us to do that. Because we know next month or 3 months from now, we've got another job, and we're going to have to rejig the layout again.
Right.
And a lot of places will leave extra electrical cord, extra ducting, so they have that flexibility
To move things.
If you have a movable work cell that's flexible, you're starting to understand what it means to be truly lean and practice continuous improvement, because there's never a statue. There should never be a statue in your shop.
Oh,
if there is, guess what happens? You have to move the product to that piece of equipment, and you're probably then building in some waste. And when you build in waste, what happens is you're decreasing your profit margin.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier
that's up to you, but I don't think that's a smart move.
That's not what people want to do. No. You mentioned earlier, the only thing we're trying to do is add value to the customer. Mm-hmm. What is value to the customer is, I'll just say, use this element for an example. I want a vanity. They don't care about anything else. All they want is to snap their fingers and suddenly there's a vanity in front of them, or whatever work piece you're making. And so anything that you're doing that doesn't just put a vanity on their site is not adding value to them. And you're potentially wasting money, time, energy, resources, materials doing it.
Well, but there's a great definition for those folks who, have started down the lean journey. They're going to be familiar with this. And for those of you who haven't yet, well, it's sit up and take notice, because this is important. There's value-added activities and there are non-value-added activities. And a value-added activity has to change, first of all, the form, fit, or function of something, product or service. So if I have a tabletop that needs to be put through the shaper to put a profile on the edge, when I am shaping, when the knives hit the wood and are cutting the shaping, that's the value-added activity.
Right.
Feeding it into the shaper, taking it off the shaper, putting it back on the pallet are non-value-added activities.
Interesting.
Why? Because then the customer is not willing to pay for it. So it has to change the form, fit, or function, but then the customer has to be willing to pay for it as well to make it value added. And if you told the customer, our shop really isn't set up all that effectively and efficiently, and so we really have to do a lot of moving of the product, and we ran those 20 tabletops through the shaper the other day, but the first few that went through, which are now on the bottom of the pile, weren't really correct. So we had to move 15 or 18 of them out of the way so we could redo those bottom few.
Yeah.
And, that costs money, Mr. and Mrs. Client. So we're going to add a little bit extra on our invoice to you because of our inefficiency. What's the customer going to tell you? Well, they're going to tell you to go pound sand. So the customer is not willing to pay for rework and movement, waiting, and all this stuff. Example. That's why it's non-value added. Now, feeding and unloading for machine is necessary, but it's still non-value added. So because it's non-value added, you better find a very effective and efficient way to do that so that you can do it quickly and effectively and efficiently. So you're not creating, you're not throwing a lot of extra money at it, which you're not going to be able to get for your product from the customer.
Yeah.
We have to do it effectively and efficiently. So value added versus non-value added activities. Non-value added activities are all those wastes.
Yeah.
Right? They're the standing around, waiting for information, waiting for product, waiting for supplies.
Waiting to pull the next piece of material from the step ahead of you. Yeah.
So that it's important to understand that terminology and then apply it to your operation and see how can we do it better. we've done this with our SWIFT assessment. Every time we're doing one, we say, hey, we need to change this a little bit to make it a little bit better and create more value for the customer.
Yeah. You and I have been, I think we've been very diligent in looking at the SWIFT assessment. First, the biggest change, Rick, is understanding that this new, I don't even want to use these buzzwords, but the situation that has been thrust upon us, which is COVID and bubbles and travel restrictions and quarantining, has really made us sit back and say, well, how can we still provide the same amount of value given the new reality? Mm-hmm. And that's where the SWIFT assessment was born. And then you and I said, well, we got to do a couple to get our systems running. And that's what this beta program, we called it the beta program of the SWIFT. Now, people listening, by the way, we have 1 spot left. So 4 spots have already been taken. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh man, I would love to get a start on this, now probably is a great time, because after Rick and I get this thing figured out, it's not going to be $750 anymore to do this assessment. So if you have half a mind and you just want to talk to us about it, send a text message to me at 604-837-8361, just with the word SWIFT. Doesn't matter when you're listening to this episode. I mean, I think other episodes we've talked about this, we've had responses within like minutes of the episode going live. So go ahead and send me the note. People drop off, things happen, so you never know. You gotta show up to get the rewards in this life. Mm-hmm. So the big takeaways I've had so far, Rick, in observing the impact of the SWIFT assessment on the shops that have started this, I've written them down. Number 1 is an impact on their time. Number 2 is buy-in from other people in the company. So I used the example owner, foreman before. And then communication. A lot of shops and people are not, I don't want to say they're not great communicators, but they're not communicating about the right things in the right way. And then when you show up and you say, hey guys, here's the real map, here's the lay of the land, why don't we move these pieces? It suddenly makes a ton of sense. So that's what I've seen as an observation of the process that you've brought through SWIFT. Anything to add to that? What have you seen?
Well, I guess one more thing that I would add, it just helps somebody within the organization, and it's usually one of the managers or the owners that is going to be shooting the video, because they're the decision makers. So that, we need to get those folks involved in this thing and have their buy-in. Let me just turn that off.
Wow, that's our first text message coming in right now. Is that what that is?
Oh, that could be.
Just
knows, right? So yeah. I muted that guy. So, it's usually the decision maker that's, involved in it. And so what it forces them to do then is to have that different perspective, put on that different set of lenses to, and go to Gemba. And what I mean by going to Gemba is going to where the place of truth, where the value is added. Uh-huh. So get out in the shop and watch the process and what's happening. Why is the product sitting here that long? And what I've learned is from some of the folks too, they're doing the SWIFT assessments, is they had a different understanding of what was happening in the shop when they were sitting in the office than what actually is what's going on currently. So it opens their eyes to say, that's not what I envisioned was happening.
It's not what I thought. Yeah, it's not what I'm seeing.
So now their eyes are opened. Say, hey, I got to make some changes. You've got to think about how we're going to change this. This isn't right, And I've worked with a guy in the past for many years, and he's always pushing the envelope. You would think he does something and he changes the layout in the shop or the process or the procedure, and then a month later he goes in and he says, well, we got to change it again. It's not where it made an improvement, yes, but he's not complacent or he's not happy with it. He wants to force it a bit more. So that's what the continuous improvement lean journey is about. It's like just raising the bar, making it better. And that, we talk about Paul Akers and say, well, we took care of one bottleneck, but now we discovered another bottleneck somewhere else, because now the flow is better and now the bottleneck's over here. Okay, let's make improvements to change this.
And we should expect the bottleneck. The bottleneck's a good thing.
That's an evolution. Yeah. It's important that you have that actually crop up and you can see what's happening within your facility, right?
Well, let's start to wrap this up. Rick, do you mind if I just summarize what the SWIFT program is for anybody who hasn't heard previous episodes or wants to send an application in?
You bet.
Okay, so folks, this is what the SWIFT assessment beta program looks like. So this is the current state of the beta program. As I mentioned, we've got one spot left, and so please jump on it as quickly as possible. At least get your application in. At the very least, get your application in. So the cost is $750 US while we're in beta. It's going to go up later because obviously Rick and I, we got to make this work for us as well. And right now it doesn't, but I'll just leave it at that. Once you send us the text message, send it to me at 604-837-8361. Just say the word SWIFT. Then what's going to happen is we're going to send you a questionnaire, a very simple, very brief questionnaire, just to see if your company is set up and can make the most of this. So do that right away. Once you've done that, then we'll talk about payment if that's appropriate. After that, one of the things that we're going to ask is, because you're in the beta program, which is like the tester for us. Rick's been doing this stuff for years, but what I mean is the tester in this new virtual way of delivering it is, for all of us, we want to be able to record the videos, use your information, use your picture. So as long as you're okay with that, with having your picture on the screen and sharing select pieces, it's always going to make you look good. We're not going to have anything there that makes anybody look, silly. But we do want to ask that as part of this, as a trade-off for being part of the beta program at a much reduced rate, if you're okay with us using what we find or our debrief meetings and our sessions as a recording, so that we can show other people what this looks like, so that other people can see it in the future. Because of course this is going to change as we go on.
So basically a case study is what you're...
There you go. I could have said that. See, you're helping me be lean right now. So we want to share the case study. So again, for those of you listening that want to do this, send a text message to me like right now, 604-837-8361, and just say the word SWIFT, and then we'll take all the details from there.
Perfect.
Anything else from you, Rick, before we start to wrap it up?
I'm just kind of looking through my notes here. I think we covered, we get into, we talk about the huddle a lot. There are folks who are doing a communication type meeting, a weekly production meeting, and maybe that's important. But I think beyond that, you need to be meeting, daily for 5 minutes, just going over what has happened in the last 24 hours. And really the focus should be quality, production, safety, and keeping costs down. And no one is, that's not in any particular order. One isn't more important than the other. They're all equally important, but it focuses your efforts on a small time frame, and maybe you can fix what bugs you, or, start to look at why are we having a lot of the same types of rework? What's the root cause, and can we make some changes? And by starting to do that, and you get better communication, you make some improvements, and over time, and you'll see that your time is better used efficiently and more effectively, and hopefully the lead times go down, the profit margins go up slightly, and you're happy with what you see, right? So and you're getting engagement from the folks too. It's not just one person that drives lean. It's not just the owner, the manager, the foreman. Everybody needs to be engaged in that and understand that, and then they work as a team. So we need engagement from the folks.
Yeah. Geez, can you imagine if a quarterback went to call the plays at the huddle and none of the other players showed up?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a silly football game.
Or they didn't know what the plays were.
Or they didn't know what the plays were. Yeah.
Exactly.
What the code language was.
Right.
All right, Rick. Well, thank you so much. I think as time goes on, I'm going to continue to have you back here on the show so we can talk about the improvements, the observations that we've made, some of the insights that we've learned from people in the field. It's amazing to see how many, how we just talk about this in general as cabinetry or woodwork, but we've had so many interesting applications come through. People doing steel laboratory furniture. Everybody thinks, we all do the same thing, but they're all different.
Yeah, lean, you apply continuous improvement. It doesn't matter what your product that you manufacture or what service. I mean, it can be a customer service. We can do it in banks, post offices, schools, healthcare system, installation, whatever. And it doesn't have to be wood. It can be whatever you're manufacturing. But the lean tools can be applied in the same way, and it doesn't matter what you're doing. There are wastes in every manufacturing sector, in every service industry that's providing service. There are wastes that you can look at. How can we do it better?
I can't resist the joke because you just said the word waste, but you also told me that you did this process for a toilet paper manufacturing company.
Mm-hmm.
I should have waited till you didn't have a drink in your mouth.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it can work anywhere, and it's, my big takeaway so far, the one that really, like, I got off that call and I thought I forgot about the pull, because in my mind it's push. I'm an entrepreneur, push. Mm-hmm. And you reminded me, it's a pull. How do we make it pull more efficiently? Bring the work through the shop instead of pushing it. Again, that's the attitude. That's the approach. It's just a mentality mindset that changes everything.
Yeah, you have to have a balanced workflow is really what you're trying to achieve, right? And you have to create some queue, and you have to have some batches built in between certain process steps based on whatever it is you're doing, understanding that if a machine breaks down, I've got enough product that I can still produce for a day while that machine is being repaired. But it's really understanding how to balance the workflow,
Yeah.
So.
Well, here's a lean suggestion for all of the listeners, a continuous improvement suggestion for the listeners. If you're listening to this show, this particular episode, and wishing somebody else in your company also listened to it to make it easier for you to explain, share the episode with them. It's a podcast. It's free. So the training that Ric was just talking about, this isn't even going to cost you anything. You're going to actually have Ric and I facilitating this conversation with the other person in the company that you're hoping is open-minded and looking at it and going, okay, I see what they're trying to get to here. And yeah, maybe that makes sense. So go ahead, use this as a tool at your leadership level in the company, share it with other people and say, hey, have a listen. And then on Tuesday, let's talk about it. There you go. You just did a training for your team.
Sure. You bet.
All right, Ric. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think you're going to get out and do some marathon training today. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, that's I got to go for my daily run here and probably crank off, 8 or 10 kilometers today. So let's see what happens.
All right. Well, send me a postcard from kilometer 9.
So listen, it was great chatting with you. I always love chatting about continuous improvement and lean, and giving those tidbits of information out to the folks. So it's always good to get that.
Perfect. All right, Ric, have a great day. We'll talk to you soon.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.